Welcome to the world of Pokemon. For nearly 25 years, generations young and old have come together to truly experience the power that's inside the magical world of these pocket monsters. Each year, millions of trainers far and wide come together to the Pokemon League to face the challenge of what it truly takes to become a Pokemon champion. But today, we focus our eyes on a new challenger, one by the name of Xalem, who's finally ready to claim his rightful place in the story we've come to know as the Pokemon Legacy.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Pokemon Legacy. Can you believe that this amazing series has been around for over 25 years now? From Pokemon Red and Green released back in 1996 to Pokemon Sword and Shield released in 2019. This series has not only been a monumental staple to the entire video game industry, but a massive collection of wonderful memories and moments that have been shared by millions of people young and old. And that's why I've decided to devote the entirety of 2021 to taking an in-depth look at this entire series and what makes it so great. So let's just go ahead and get started. Where can I go ahead and sign up and get my first Pokemon?
You do know that Pokemon aren't real, right?
What? Pokemon needs no explanation. I don't think I need to give the whole Pokemon is a Japanese media franchise managed by the Pokemon Company. No, it's just Pokemon. It's the Pikachu game, but there's like 900 of them. Also, there's like 10 different Pikachus, but that's beside the point. I can vividly remember the year being 1996. Donkey Kong Country was the game to play, the Nintendo 64 was gearing up to release, and Pokemon was just released for the original Game Boy. Meanwhile, I don't remember any of this because I had no concept of thought. And I also didn't live in Japan. But what I do remember is the countless memories and emotion that this series has made me experience, as this is without a doubt the first series I truly got invested in as a child. I remember climbing the Burn Tower in Ecruteak City, getting my first legitimate level 100 Pokemon, and jumping into 3D and taking advantage of the new 3D effects before realizing that this is absolutely pointless. But I love this series, and after 900 Pokemon, over 30 mainline titles, and way too many spin-offs to count, it's very clear that I'm not the only one who feels this way as well. What started off as a simple Game Boy game has since grown into a massive media titan. So massive, in fact, that this is the highest grossing franchise in media history. That's not a joke. It's bigger than Star Wars, Hello Kitty, the entire Avengers universe, and yes, even Mario. But with a series this big, this leaves so much room for discussion regarding the Pokemon series, movies, competitive championships, gameplay challenges, fan art, trading card games, shiny Pokemon, the list goes on and on. The scope of how big Pokemon has become is genuinely impressive to the point that it's hard to even believe that it exists. Newcomers to the series experiencing Sword and Shield for the first time can easily be overwhelmed with the over 400 Pokemon to learn and interact with and grow an attachment to. Imagine their faces when they realize there's over double that left, alongside 8 vastly different worlds and adventures to be had across its 25-year history. Now, 8 different worlds doesn't seem like much in the grand scheme of things. I mean, Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest are up to 16 and 11 different worlds respectively. But having each region be interconnected with each other, with characters from one game showing up in the next, not to dog on Square's famous series, but this is genuinely impressive. And this even extends to the anime and the mobile games. I mean, I've had this Pokemon here for over 15 years. What other game series do you know has been able to amass something relatively close to this achievement? But I'm getting way ahead of myself. With 8 different regions to go through, that means I have to go through 8 different mainline games and 8 different generations, and that's a lot. But like I said, I want to dissect everything that this series has to offer. What makes it amazing? And what makes it absolutely awful. But with that being said, if I really want to understand what makes this series so great, we have to go all the way back to 1989. Actually, we have to go back to 1981. 1981, the boom of video games. Arcades were all the rage, the internet was a word that didn't exist yet, and everybody and their brother were playing Donkey Kong and Pac-Man on arcade cabinets for a quarter. Meanwhile, in Machida, Japan, one young video game enthusiast was busy actually starting his own business by the name of Satoshi Tajiri. You probably know him as the sitting president of Game Freak, and that makes sense because, well, he wrote it. See, Game Freak didn't actually start out as a video game development company, but rather a magazine written by the iconic 16-year-old back in 1981. Tajiri was fascinated by games, so much in fact that he decided to create strategy guides and tips on how to beat the toughest arcade games. So all those Pokemon strategy guides you've got laying around your room, yep, Tajiri was one of the first to pioneer that idea. except his strategy guides were basically just handwritten notes stapled together and sold on the street corner. But that was enough to get the ball rolling, and soon he was met by Ken Sugimori, a young artist his age who was quickly fascinated by his ideas. Soon after offering his illustrative prowess to help Tajiri, the magazine company Game Freak was born. Fast forward to 1989, and Tajiri had a college degree under his belt, while also discovering a friendship with one composer by the name of Junichi Masuda, another name many of us will recognize. Combining all three of these talents together, the team wanted more than this, and, well, Game Freak was born again in the form of a video game company, which means we made it! Sorta. See, all of the pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together. They had the artist, the composer, the programmer, everything was going in the right direction. Now all they really needed was the experience, of course they also needed the money, and I don't know, maybe they could get a sponsorship from Shigeru Miyamoto, the legendary Mario creator. I think that would be pretty cool. So the legendary Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto joined the team, but not without merit. See, Tajiri had an interesting idea that stemmed from Nintendo's #1 console at the time. No, not that one. I'm talking about the Game Boy. With the release of the Game Boy, the idea of on-the-go gaming was incredible. You could play all of your favorite games on the go, albeit in a little lower resolution and a bit clunkier hardware, but still amazing nonetheless. You could play Mario and Zelda without being plugged into the TV. Bathroom trips changed forever. But alongside the release of the Game Boy was the Game Boy Link cable. This accessory wasn't an afterthought, it was available right from the get-go. You wanted to battle your friends in Tetris right out of the box or trounce them in Dr. Mario? You could do that! But Tajiri saw this in a different light. What if instead of using the Game Boy system for battling and competition, we use this for collection and transferring of data? Tajiri imagined his childhood hobby of insect collecting, as creatures and bugs would scurry across the link cable to be utilized in a completely separate experience. It'd be like if I took a sword from your version of Final Fantasy and stole it to use in my playthrough, except that sword is a two-headed bird named Sparkle. The developers were perplexed to say the least, and had no idea what Tajiri envisioned, but Miyamoto, the dude responsible for, you know, this successful Nintendo franchise, was interested in his creative spirit, and, for a lack of a better term, took Tajiri under his wing as sort of a mentor to help him envision this ambitious idea. And I know I'm going on and on about the story of this monumental franchise, but you don't really get to $100 billion in sales without having some interesting stories along the way, like, you know, nearly bankrupting the entire company and having to live off your dad for a couple years. Yes, Pokemon was extremely ambitious for Nintendo, to the point where Game Freak almost went bankrupt. If you think Naughty Dog was bad for harsh workplace experiences, people at Game Freak weren't even getting paid at some point, and even though the cast was small, many quit before the game even started development. Nintendo actually had to bail Game Freak out to continue the game's production, which is why you don't see Pokemon on other platforms. To keep at least some bit of money going, Game Freak released a couple of smaller titles, most notably Yoshi in '91 and Mario and Wario in '93, but all the while working on their title known as Pocket Monsters. Now the concept was exactly as we know it today, but there was a true challenge that lied ahead of the development team. See, games like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest had popular enemies like the Slime and the Marlboros, but these creatures acted more like obstacles in your path rather than fleshed out characters. Again, I'm not dogging on these games, but Pokemon wanted to take a different approach to its obstacles. What if we gave each individual creature their own characteristics and personality to truly drive home the experience of their own adventure? We all know the catchphrase "gotta catch 'em all," which has been the basis of Pokemon since its conception. Go out, try to collect every single Pokemon, good luck to any newcomers out there. But how do you build a world that not only has a numerable amount of Pokemon to collect, but actively rewards the player for their exploration and versatility? That's where the original design philosophy for creating Pokemon came from. Instead of just enemies that you can capture and collect, Pokemon base themselves off an active ecosystem that thrive off of each other. This is why you see a lot of the first generation Pokemon resemble real-life animals with minor tweaks. Caterpie is just a caterpillar, Magikarp is a goldfish, Ponyta is a horse that you can ride on its back for some reason, and they all interact within the ecosystem and make sense within the world of Pokemon. For the most part, some of these I have no idea why they're here. These designs came from Ken Sugimori, whose basis for a lot of these designs came from classic kaiju movies like Godzilla and Ultraman. These inspirations can be seen in the final designs, like Rhydon, the first Pokemon that was actually conceptualized. But Nintendo was afraid that these kaiju-like designs would make for a memorable experience, so Nintendo brought in Atsuko Nishida, and I'm really hoping I'm getting all these names right. She focused on the more cutesy characters, and can probably be credited with one of the primary reasons the series was so successful in the first place. Combine the two, add in the concept of evolution to bring in a more complete sense of progression, and Pokemon was born, also known as Pocket Monsters in Japan. That was a lot to go through. Pokemon has a rich history dating far before these games began that I felt it was vital to its overall success, but I'm finally ready to take a look at these games and what makes them so amazing. And yes, what also makes them a buggy mess, so let's just jump right into it. is Pokemon Red and Green, released on February 27th, 1996 for the original Game Boy. Here you explore the open world map of the Kanto Region, a land brimming with Pokemon wildlife named after and slightly inspired by the real-life region in Kanto, Japan. The emphasis on the first region was a blend of exploration combined with new age technology. It wasn't set in a futuristic society, but rather an environment and ecosystem that had a heavy emphasis on technology and electronics. Tajiri wanted to capture that original childhood feeling of bug collecting while also making the game relatable enough due to the rise of electronics and an advancing digital age. This can be seen in the overall style of the game. For every natural environment like Viridian Forest, Rock Tunnel, and Seafoam Island, we had tons of modern day locations like the power plant and the SS Anne cruise ship. For the graphics at the time, I would say this looks exceptional for the Game Boy. Sure, places like the power plant you might not be able to piece together without the context, but once you know what this is, it truly makes a lot of sense. Now I have a confession to make. I've beaten Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green about 15 times, and of course I've beaten Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu as well. But I have never actually played the original Pokemon Red, so that's gonna change today when I finally take a look at this amazing title. Where the f*** is my game? So after searching high and low through my house with absolutely no luck, I finally found my completely legitimate copy of Pokemon Red. And I gotta say, as someone who's never played the original titles, there's this weird sense of nostalgia. Knowing this house in Pallet Town is where millions of people's first adventures started is really heartwarming, and there's a major charm to it all. Also, I am genuinely impressed on how formulaic and iconic this series was able to become right from the start. Of course, when we think about Pokemon, we think about the Pokemon League, choosing your starters, but diving even deeper than that, everything at the core of the series is relatively unchanged. I mean, look at Red's battle system compared to Sword and Shield's. 4 commands, 4 moves, same type matchups, although of course more would be added later on. You were even able to nickname your Pokemon in the first game. The concept of evolution, version-exclusive Pokemon, hell, even being able to store your Pokemon in a PC has been around since the very beginning. But not everything in the series has been here since the first game. Held items were missing from the first generation entirely, which meant no berries, no leftovers, no stat-boosting items, and no mail. Breeding also wasn't implemented in the first game, but the daycare was, although you could only leave 1 Pokemon as compared to 2. As far as shinies, abilities, relearning moves, natures, these would all be introduced in later titles, which we'll get to eventually, but for now I actually need to start my adventure. And I know what you're all thinking, and I'm finally here to answer the age-old question of what starter Pokemon I was gonna choose. Was I gonna go with Charmander, the fire lizard with a lit flame on its back, Squirtle, the adorable half-turtle, half-squirrel water Pokemon, or Bulbasaur, the anthropomorphic cross between a dinosaur and a frog with a bulb on his back? Yeah, believe it or not, Bulbasaur is actually a frog. Just look at his running animation from later generations. These 3 starter designs were chosen because they were popular and recognizable to small children. Tajiri wanted the concept of bug collecting to really take precedence in the game, so our 3 main starters reflect 3 of the most widely collected animals. I've always been a big fan of Bulbasaur. I mean, look at him, he's adorable. He's got a little onion on his back. I named him Shrek. From there, our story begins. I don't think I need to reiterate on the story of Pokemon, but just in case you're a Pokemon trainer, you go on an adventure. You battle the 8 gym leaders, take down a criminal organization, and come home to your widowed or divorced mom. And that's it. That's pretty much the whole series in a nutshell. But in the first generation, nobody knew what the hell Pokemon was. To them, this could have been Dragon Quest on the go. The only notable monster collector I could think of that we really had in the 90s was Shin Megami Tensei, and do you really think your 7-year-old child is ready to play a game that has this? No, Pokemon had to set the rules, to lay the foundations. This Machop isn't gonna build the whole game itself. And I might be crazy, but I think a perfect example of how the first Pokemon game sets its pace is right under your nose in Viridian City. This is the first city you come to. It might be small, but it's exactly what a first location should be for a brand new series. Viridian introduces the series staple Pokemon Center. Universal healthcare? I'm sold! It has your PC storage, your trade stations, the ability to heal your Pokemon. This is the equivalent of your normal video game hub world. Viridian also has an item shop, but come on, you really think I'm gonna go into depth about this? Pokemon has an economy, big whoop. However, there is 3 things that I think make Viridian City the perfect introduction for the entire series. First of all is how the game teaches you how to play the game. Everything tutorial-wise, such as the catching minigame and the trainer school, is entirely optional. You've never played a Pokemon game before, there's a building that can teach you all of the fundamentals for your adventure. But if you've played this game 20 times before, you can ignore this shit altogether. together. Pokemon Red doesn't want to hold your hand and spend 20 minutes explaining to you a movie minigame that you're never going to use. But of course, right outside of the trainer school, you have the blocked off gym. There's this sense of mystery as to why this gym is closed. Your entire journey starts right in your backyard, but you can't even begin at the place you're supposed to. But all of this pales in comparison to the Indigo Plateau located right to the west of Viridian City. This drove my sense of adventure as a child, knowing that I'm about to go on this grandiose adventure to the Pokemon League and the final stretch is essentially in my backyard. What better driving force can you have in an RPG? How about all of this fucking space? This is the Kanto region. It's got everything you need. 10 cities, water. One thing I can appreciate about Pokemon is each city has a different theme or new gameplay element added to it. Celadon City is a sprawling marketplace where you can gamble as long as you're the legal age of 10. Vermilion has the SSN, which is so memorable and amusing that you forget that this town actually has a gym leader. Even Lavender Town, which doesn't have a gym, has the Pokemon Tower, and oh man, this was so cool as a kid. The slow, creepy music that we've all grown to love, the mystery of needing the Silph Scope to progress further and see the fabled Ghost-type Pokemon. Lavender Town really nailed the aesthetic of Pokemon being a realistic world full of life, which is ironic seeing as if the whole story takes place in a graveyard. Of course, that's not the only pivotal story moments in the first generation. Pokemon Red has a story that's fairly simple, but it's serviceable. Team Rocket has been here since the very beginning, encountering the player as early as Mount Moon. I think they're a decent villain team. As cliche as they are, it's an evil organization who wants to use Pokemon to take over the world for money. Congratulations, I've also read the back of a cereal box. But like I said, this is a debut RPG on the Game Boy for kids. I'm not looking for a climactic, earth-shattering experience where you fight God for the sake of humanity. As long as the game fills me with a sense of purpose, I can be inspired to find a reason to proceed. Which Pokemon is full of? Don't care about thwarting Team Rocket? You can challenge the Pokemon League. Don't care about the gym battles? You can explore the Kanto region and capture all of the Pokemon. Don't care about the Pokemon? Then tell me, why the f are you still here? We've all heard of the phrase, the journey is more important than the destination. Just crack open your local fortune cookie. Pokemon executes this perfectly at its core. Every town has something new to uncover. NPCs feel like they're actually connected to the environment. It might be very bare bones, but that's one thing I really like about the first gen. The whole world feels connected rather than just a dozen individual towns squished together on one map. People in one town talk about their experience in another. Other trainers may actually want to trade with you, some having rare Pokemon that are much harder to find than you might think. It might be extremely simplistic compared to every other mainline title, but I'm not gonna say that I'm not impressed, seeing that this entire game has a smaller file size than most of today's songs on the radio. But the best implemented story element in my eyes for the Pokemon series is none other than your Pokemon rival. They've been in every game, they've led to countless debates on which one is the best, and in most cases, they're always one step ahead of you. This is Blue, or Gary, or Tix, or Mario. As long as it's under 7 characters, you can name them whatever you want. Blue drives this game, always being one step ahead of you, always challenging you at the most inopportune times, like, you know, in the middle of a massive corporation takeover. I always found it funny that your rival gets upset that you get to pick your starter first. On one hand, if he had a Pokemon in mind, I totally get it, but on the other hand, he's always going to pick your weakness. Essentially, Professor Oak is letting him play a game of rock, paper, scissors, except I always go first. Having your rival pick your counter is so cool. Even if you pick a Pokemon to breeze through the first gym, you still have to deal with your rival being able to trump your team's ace. And depending on which starter you pick, your rival actually has different Pokemon to complement the starter he chose. Say, would you look at the time? It's finally time for me to see if this game has actually held up over the past 25 years. Just give me 2 seconds, okay? I'll have to fill out some personal information real quick. Yes, I agree that all views expressed in this video are completely my own. That's a no-brainer right there. Yes, I'm comfortable with receiving negative comments on the internet regarding my opinion. So I'm gonna be honest here, this game isn't as bad as I thought it would be, and of course I say that with the it's not that bad but still feels like a first-generation Pokemon game bad. The entire gameplay is based off of building your own experience and choosing your own adventure. Of course, it's not any go here and do this crucial decision could kill characters sort of game, but rather you have full control over how you play and interact with the environment. You can tackle the game any way that you want, use any Pokemon that you choose to achieve the goal of becoming a Pokemon master. Speedrunners may use a single Pokemon, while Nuzlockers use a consistent rule of using the first Pokemon you encounter on each route. F that, I want to hear some bullshit. Gen 1 games are absolute trash, is what I would say if I didn't try to look at this game from the angle of this game is 25 years old and obviously has its faults. I mean, have you ever tried fishing inside of a Pokemon gym? Well, boy, I have the game for you. This game is massive for a Game Boy game, and obviously corners had to be cut, so of course, naturally, this is going to affect the gameplay. Taking a look at this in a closer scope, I cannot deny that this is really well thought out. Being a turn-based RPG is nothing genre-defining or groundbreaking, but it's done in a much different way than other titles. Most games have a plethora of options that you can choose from. Just look at Final Fantasy XII and all these different actions at my disposal. As one of my favorite JRPGs, I love this wide range of options, but many times in RPGs like this, when every character has access to nearly every skill in the game, you lose that sense of individuality of what makes each character special. Pokemon thrives off of its personality-based approach, and by actually putting restrictions on the game, it actually makes the game more fun. But Xalem, how can that be? Each Pokemon has a different type. Each set of moves, you'd know the drill. But the moves it learns is not based off of a class system or a monster type, but the actual anatomy of each individual Pokemon themselves. Spearow is a bird, so it can use Peck. Goldeen isn't a bird, but because it has a horn, it still has access to Peck. Basing the movesets around the Pokemon themselves and not restricting them to their typing makes every Pokemon wildly unique and really draws a deeper connection to these creatures. But why the f can't Charizard use Fly? I mean, did you not see the giant wings on his back? Doduo doesn't have wings and he can still use Fly. You're telling me it's more realistic that I can fly on the back of a Spearow? Growlithe is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, despite the fact that it actually can't use Growl. Ammonite can use Horn Attack. Do you see a horn? Barring the side tangent, each Pokemon has its restrictions, and each Pokemon is only allowed to learn 4 moves. Going back to the I'm able to use every single move in the game is nice, and I enjoy having those options, but let's add into that an element of strategy. Every Pokemon is able to learn a maximum of 4 moves. If you want to learn an additional move, you have to forget one that you had already learned. Limiting your team to only 4 moves in my eyes is massively overlooked. Not only does it make the game more difficult, but makes you actively think about what type of team you want to build. Maybe you want to build a status condition team, or maybe you want a team that buffs your attacks. I always go with the all-out attack team during playthroughs, but in competitive play nowadays, I run a stall team, and I promise you, everybody f***ing hates me. But one thing that drives me mad about the old games is the fact that you can't actually see what move you're actively learning. Cool, I leveled up, I get to learn a new move, Fissure, that's great, what does it do? I don't know. You don't actually get to see what any of the moves do before you go and actually learn it. I can learn Fissure, and that's cool, but now I'm stuck with a move that has a 30% chance of actually hitting the opponent. This is why the original games offered strategy guides to help the players, but I was poor. I never had strategy guides growing up. I stole these from my brother. I remember at one point during my playthrough, I learned a new move that I didn't mean to, which thank goodness this game allows you to save anywhere. But one wrong move because the game didn't allow you the chance to know what you were doing is one major drawback of the first generation. But what's Pokemon without its type matchups? And there's plenty of things to discuss here. Most of your type matchups make a lot of sense. Water douses fire, fire and burns grass, grass, I don't know, absorbs water like soil in the ground, but water conducts electricity, which gets nullified when grounded. Most of these type matchups make a lot of sense, and I can see what they were going for. But some are just thrown in there for odd balancing reasons. Now, I will admit, it was always a fun challenge as a child to try to think of the reasons these type matchups exist. Birds eat bugs, so it's super effective, but birds fly south for the winter, which is why ice beats flying. A fighting type would not have the capabilities of getting close range against a psychic opponent, but has the mental fortitude to crush a boulder, which I guess now that I'm talking about psychic types, congratulations! I finally get to rant about psychic types, and it only took me, 23 minutes. Basically, psychic types are an absolute joke in the first gen. Pokemon typically have 6 stats: HP, attack, defense, special defense, and speed. But in the first generation, special moves were allotted to only one stat aptly named the special stat, which would handle special attack and special defense. And I think you know where this is going. Most psychic type Pokemon were special powerhouses, so on top of being ridiculously overpowered, they were ridiculously bulky as well. So of course you would be able to counter them with type disadvantages, right? Nope! Psychic type are weak to 2 types of attacks, Bugs and Ghost. Ghost type moves that deal damage in the first generation include Nightshade, and that's literally it. Nightshade also deals set damage. No matter what Pokemon uses Nightshade, it's always going to deal what's identical to the user's level. It also doesn't help that the Ghastly line is the only ghost in the game and also has a weakness to psychic type since it's also poison. Now, bug Pokemon are a bit more complicated, so let's take a look at what bug Pokemon we actually have. Now let's take away the ones that don't have any bug attacks. There are 3 attacking bug moves in Generation 1, Leech Life, Twin Needle, and Pin Missile. Leech Life is a move that does 20 damage, which means Tackle actually does more damage than it, so let's take away all of the Pokemon that don't use that since they have the utility to use other better moves. and you're left with Beedrill, one of the first Pokemon you meet that has some of the lowest stats in the game. Now Beedrill isn't that bad, knowing it can counter a lot of bug moves actually does make it useful. Twin Needle has 50 power and Pin Missile has a chance to hit 5 times. A chance is the key word. But Beedrill is too weak of a threat since nearly every single Psychic Pokemon outspeeds it, and Beedrill also has a weakness to Psychic moves since it's a Poison type. What the fuck? Believe it or not, the best counter to Psychic types is actually Jolteon in my opinion. He outspeeds almost every Pokemon in the game and has access to Pin Missile, although it's not very powerful due to its low attack stat. There were some other really weird problems as well. Dragon Pokemon, and by that I mean Dragonite, the only dragon line in the game, only had the move Dragon Rage in their utility, a move that only deals 40 damage no matter the opponent. That's fine, I guess. I mean, dragons are one of the least vulnerable Pokemon in the game with 4 type advantages and 1 disadvantage, not including itself. But it just takes away a bit of the fun. It'd be neat to actually have a bit larger move pool for a lot of the Pokemon. Other than that, everything in this game is extremely polished. Remember when I took a lie detector test? I'm not exactly sure why, but I think the gym statues don't have a specific property to dictate what this is. More than likely, water is the first property in the game's code, so it automatically grabs this and sets it to water, allowing you to fish and surf on it as well. I think the only other main gripe in this game is, oh god, I really don't like this. To save space in the game's code, Pokemon Red has major flaws in its menu system. Is it nice? Yeah, it's efficient. All of my options are laid out in a way where it's easy to navigate and I know where to find everything. Let me just do this real quick. Does it service the player? I guess. It can be really clunky at times as you have to exit each individual prompt to get to the next one, but I just for the life of me cannot stand the amount of space and storage that I have. Your PC system only stores 50 items on top of the 20 you already have in your bag, alongside having to switch boxes every time you catch too many Pokemon to fit in one. This is fine, I guess, but I can't deny that it's aggravating, and I'm glad it got fixed when they advanced to better hardware. To put it into perspective, if you had every TM and HM in the game, you could barely fit all of them in your PC and bag. Now TMs and HMs were a really neat way to add diverse moves to your Pokemon that they couldn't already learn. HMs were especially cool. Using Pokemon's abilities outside of battle made for an awesome way to interact with the world, and in later generations, the puzzles implemented with these would expand the series even more. However, in the first gen, it can get tedious having to use the HMs over and over again, especially since you had to go into the menu every time you wanted to use them. But Flash, I have to say, is the dumbest move in the entire series. It has almost no use in battle and is only used to go through one location in the entire game. Although it's considered mandatory, I don't even bother. Every time I run through this game, I just go through the cave blind, because that's honestly less frustrating than taking up a slot on my Pokemon moves. And there's a lot more problems that I can talk about regarding this game. The experience share being a late game item, the slot machines being complete RNG and not a lot of fun, the backwards coding that would essentially allow you to beat the game in less than 1 minute and 30 seconds that I do not have the knowledge to explain here, so I suggest you go watch somebody else explain it. But Gen 1 had some amazing things that are still worth praising to this day. The Safari Zone was such a great time. Taking a step back from battling to have a free-for-all catching minigame was a nice change of pace midway through the story. The concept of overworld encounters that felt special, like Snorlax and the legendary birds, made me feel a sense of accomplishment and progression. Different types of transportation, like cycling, surfing, and flying, that just made the adventure feel more special. But all of that pales in comparison to one thing. The Elite Four, the final gauntlet for trainers at the end of a long and arduous journey. What better way to cap off your adventure than with a rigorous challenge against 4 of the toughest trainers in the entire region? And I swept them 10 levels too low. To be fair, I have been playing this game my entire life, so I can't get an accurate judge on how tough these encounters are, but the concept is fantastic, and it's no surprise it's been in almost every single game since. Capping this off after defeating Lance the Dragon Master is walking into the final room, and there he is. The one you started your whole entire adventure with. The one who was your first challenge in the whole entire region will again be your last. And again, I stomped his ass. But it felt surreal. I know this is the millionth time I've beaten this story, but this is the first time I beat the original. It felt weird going back into the Hall of Fame and registering my Pokemon 25 years later after this long series began, and I actually got a bit emotional. The credits rolled, all the names I mentioned before appeared, and my journey was over. So what do I do now?
I mean, I don't know, I could capture all the Pokemon.
Gotta catch 'em all, the entire point of the entire Pokemon series. I've covered the history, the story, the gameplay, but none of that is actually important if the Pokemon aren't enjoyable and fun. There were 150 Pokemon in the original game, and I know there's technically 151, but just bear with me. There are millions of different combinations of what your final team can be ending the game. Mine ended with Venusaur named Shrek, a Pikachu named Mascot, Vaporeon named Compatible, Kangaskhan named Foster, Marowak named Oedipus, and an Arcanine named Jenny. I chose these 6 Pokemon based off of them being some of my personal favorites in the region and Kangaskhan, because I don't know, I'd never used a Kangaskhan before. I wanted to see what it was like. Unfortunately, I couldn't use Vulpix because he's a version-exclusive Pokemon. See, Vulpix is in Pokemon Blue, while Growlithe is in Pokemon Red. This is why Pokemon was so successful. Alongside having version-exclusive Pokemon, certain Pokemon were only obtainable via trading. So if you wanted to complete your Pokedex, you had to communicate with your friends.
Listen, man, I need your help.
But Xalem, if you traded your friend a level 100 Pokemon, couldn't you just sweep through the entire game? And the answer is no, because your Pokemon would disobey you like Charizard in the anime, and of course I can't show footage of this because life is a bitch sometimes. But enough about that, what about the Pokemon themselves? There's 150 in the first gen, and I don't know a better way to talk about the Pokemon than by going into a random number generator and... oh god, what are the odds? Pikachu, the mascot of the series, easily recognizable as a mouse with its bright red cheeks, but wasn't always considered to be the mascot. Originally, that title was going to go to Clefairy, the pink moon Pokemon famous for its use of metronome. Game Freak thought that the pink design wouldn't appeal to young boys, so at the very last minute, they changed the mascot to Pikachu, and I think it worked out pretty well. Clefairy evolved into Clefable by a Moonstone, which was a really interesting way to grow your Pokemon. This was fairly creative. I have this stone and oh shit, you're a big dog now. But of course, when we talk about the stones, we have to talk about the Eevee line. These are probably the most beloved Pokemon in the entire franchise. You have one Pokemon that can evolve into 3 different forms, and when I was a kid, I actually thought that since Porygon was next in the Pokedex, it was the special evolution. Plot twist, I was wrong. And like Porygon, not every Pokemon had an evolution. These Pokemon were much later in the game and far more rare, so once you caught them, they were already fairly decent. People consistently call this crazy, but I think one of the coolest Pokemon designs is Voltorb. Some people might call it lazy, but I chalk it up to fantastic creativity. Mimics are a staple in RPGs. You find a treasure chest, get excited, and next thing you know, you're $60 down a controller. Voltorb is just a reflection of that. Sure, it looks exactly like a Pokeball, but it perfectly serves its purpose, camouflaging into the environment to make it for a better experience. There's not really any Pokemon in the first gen that I dislike. I can really find something to love about almost every single one of these Pokemon, despite the fact that some look like a goldfish or a bundle of vines wrapped around a black blob. Sure, Mr. Mime is a scary abomination that scared the living crap out of thousands of kids across the world, but you know what? He's funny in Detective Pikachu, so I've kind of got a soft spot for him. But I can't talk about Pokemon without mentioning one of the most famous Pokemon of all, hidden deep inside of Cerulean Cave, Ditto, who can also transform into Mewtwo. This was a lot of people's first exposure to the Pokemon universe, the first anime film about a genetically created Pokemon built to be the world's strongest Pokemon. I didn't realize that when you went into the Pokemon Mansion, there were actually diary entries of the experiment to create Mewtwo, so when I came back to this as a kid after watching the movie, I was blown away. Mewtwo is the most powerful Pokemon in the game, and the fight can be tough if you don't have the right team, but as long as you have the Master Ball you got from Silph Co, this shouldn't be a problem for you.
And that is all 150 Pokemon in the original game. Or so Game Freak thought.
Yeah, I told you I wouldn't forget about Mew. Mew is a very important Pokemon, and the fact that upon the release of Pokemon Red and Green, he technically didn't exist. Upon hackers viewing the game's code, rumors spread of a 151st Pokemon named Mew, the original species that Mewtwo was created from. Once the general public found out about this, these spread like wildfire. Everywhere kids were theorizing on how to actually encounter the legendary creature. See, you could find Mew under the truck in Vermilion City, which is false, but if you go to the Mimic Girl and press the B button 48 times with a Zapdos in your party and then fly to Bill's house, then you're wasting your time. These are called playground rumors. Now, Game Freak knew about this and thus gave out Mew during special events to further promote these playground rumors, which at this point the game basically sold themselves. This is why Pokemon was so popular. It became the talk of rumors on the school playground, driving intrigue from other kids to pick up the game. Not only that, but theories of how you could catch the Ghost Marowak, using a Firestone on Dragonite to get Yoshi, hidden dialogue with the daycare man to unlock breeding, and I actually just made that one up, but you know what? It's still believable enough, I suppose.
If I had to describe these games in a nutshell, it is amazing that a game series was able to become so formulaic and iconic on its first go round, and that deserves all the praise in the world. despite the fact that these games are a clunky mess. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel because a lot of these problems were changed when Pokemon Yellow came out.
Yes, 2 years later, we got Pokemon Yellow, a remake with updated sprite work and an integrated story that tied in closer with the anime. Jesse and James made their first appearance, gym leaders have teams that match the anime now, and Charizard can learn Fly. That's worth the $40 right there. Alongside Pokemon, we also had the anime, no doubt the biggest reason for Pokemon's success. It's nowhere near as big today, but back then, there was only so much you could do on a Game Boy screen, and with a wide cast of Pokemon, many of these designs were better replicated on the bigger screen. Like, come on, you look at Executor, I don't know what the f this thing is. Put it in the anime, alright, it's a palm tree. That makes a lot more sense. The anime kept up with Ash's journey, a very similar one and more immersive one than what was shown off in the games. If it wasn't for this, I guarantee you that Pokemon wouldn't be the massive success that it was today. Just ask any crowd of screaming fans. Of course, we got other things, trading card games, console spin-offs, tons of merchandise, but we'll come to these another time. Pokemon Fever was truly at its peak whenever these games came out, and even though Red and Blue is 25 years old now, it's heartwarming to see that people are still coming back and experiencing these titles, whether it be the original versions or the updates like Fire Red, Leaf Green, and the Let's Go series.
If you couldn't tell, I like Pokemon. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but the original has a little bit of something for anybody who wants to jump into this massive franchise. It's an amazing thing, trying to teach young kids to work hard to achieve their goals while also adding relatable characters that adults can enjoy as well. Even though these games have been worn into the ground, they still deserve praise to this day. I guess I'll end by saying that Gen 1 is a very special generation to me and so many others, but by God, I don't ever want to talk about this generation again. And with that, thank you very much.
With Generation 1 behind him, Xalem hangs his hat on Red, Green, and Blue. The original 151 Pokemon are now under his belt, with many more to go. But how will he fare against the 7 generations before him on this long and arduous adventure? Tune in next time to find out what's in store on a brand new episode of The Pokemon Legacy.
When the hell did I get so small?
Who's that Pokemon?
Jigglypuff seen from above.